Madness seized a section of humanity. The fury spread, burning its way into Noakhali and Tripura, rural areas of East Bengal.
Okay, namaskar everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Today we have a very illustrious guest, and I'm very thankful that despite his busy schedule, he has agreed to be here. So today we have with us Dr. Rajat Mitra, who is a renowned clinical psychologist with over 3 decades of experience at the intersection of trauma, grief, bonding, and justice. Exactly what we were talking about all this time. His life's work supports survivors of violence and advocates for marginalized community across Asia. From testifying to an expert witness in courts to leading UN-funded research, Dr. Mitra bridges psychology with policy, exactly what we need to hear. He's the recipient of national and international awards, including the UN Public Service Award for Gender Justice. Currently a professor of clinical psychology and author of The Infidel Next Door, Dr. Mitra challenges society to confront trauma, which is what we should have been talking much before, but we didn't. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to welcome Dr. Mitra, whom you can see on your screen, but I'm going to share the questions so the audience, when I'm asking him, you can also look at the question. And I'm going to start. Welcome, Dr. Mitra, and thank you. Despite your busy schedule, you are here, and we should have done this earlier. You guys watched all the conversation we had with, one survivor and then Dr. Colin, etc. So keep that in mind. These questions are divided into 3 parts. I'm going to go through them slowly. So the first question, Dr. Mitra, what epigenetic or biological pathways might carry trauma's effect across generations?
Okay, this is a very important question, and it is important to understand trauma's relationship with time. As we know that, a traumatic experience is a huge, overwhelming event, and it is very difficult to repress it or elaborate on that experience. So, like, if it's many an overwhelming experience, we are able to repress and we are able to elaborate. But many times with trauma which is very big, our system fragments and we are not able to repress that. So what the human system does in that situation is to encrypt it, is to convert it into a code, and within ourselves it kind of creates a psychic space which encapsulates the experience, and it remains and emerges, it comes out in fragments. So a lot of work in recent times, research in recent times is beginning to show that trauma is encrypted in ourselves, like it exists as a code, and when the time comes, it kind of resurfaces and comes out, right? So the important relationship of trauma, with time. So when parents they encrypt this thing within themselves, they pass it on to the children, to the grandchildren. I mean, the children to the grandchildren, often through germ cells. This is believed. I mean, I wouldn't say that we are at the final conclusion of our work, that's being done. But it is believed that we pass it on to the children and to the grandchildren in the process, and it goes on. So by and large, there are supposed to be 3 epigenetic pathways right now, which is believed in from parents, and there is a process called methylation by which the system within ourselves, the immune, I mean, it's considered erasure or suppression of gene expression that is affected. And I mean, these are biological terms, and these are biological understandings of trauma. But we do understand that trauma is not passed or verbally. I mean, the language of trauma is silence. There is often said that trauma is passed in non-verbal ways. The language of trauma is silence. So therefore, it goes on from family to family, and the biological pathways for that are still being mapped fully. And I hope that in another 25 to 50 years, maybe even earlier, they will be mapped fully.
Okay. Wow, that's so interesting. I didn't know anything about this, although, I've studied some trauma. So this leads us to our second question. Before that, I'll just say a little story, because my mother's side, especially, they were refugees. They were zamindars in a place called Arai Hajar, which is now in Bangladesh. And then, as the children, especially the young girls, were growing up, my grandfather decided to leave that huge property and come. They didn't want to. And my grandmother was always complaining how small the room is, and Kolkata, it's horrible, and so forth. But they had no choice. Now, one story, because my next question is about storytelling, I still remember my mother told me that after being married to my dad, my dad's family migrated long back, much before the partition. And my grandma's sister, which means my mother's masi or aunt, invited the newly married groom and bride. So they all went, including my paternal grandparents, but they were living in a very shabby condition, although there were zamindars in East Bengal. So they were talking, and suddenly my mother's uncle turned his face and wiped his tears. And so my mother said, Mesha Moshe, which is uncle, what happened? Said,
Yeah.
this is not how we entertain the new son-in-law, the new damad. I have nothing now. Although they arranged a lot of food, but he still thought he would entertain them in the zamindar way. That story remained with me. So that's it's a simple story. It's about food, and that the fact that he cannot entertain the new son-in-law, which I think is very patriarchal, but that's a separate issue. So my question to you, Dr. Mitra, is how does unspoken trauma or explicit storytelling affect children's identity and mental health?
Okay, it's the unspoken. I mean, you told a story, and also that gives me permission also to tell a story. Unspoken trauma, it affects children's identity and mental health both. Like, I give you an example. Many years back, I was with a Jewish professor and his wife, and we were going for a workshop. And before going, they, suddenly the wife, we had packed in and we were in the car. The wife said, "Oh, I have not put the food outside." I said, what do you mean? So she quickly went in, emptied the refrigerator, and carried the food, with all the food. So I said, we don't need all this, and they have, facilities for eating. So she said, no, every time we go out, we empty the refrigerator so that no food is left. So there is something about, not letting food be in the house. So I said, why? So she says, okay, this is something we have been doing ever since our parents, who were Holocaust survivors. If food was found with you in the concentration camps, you could be killed. So they did that, and, they survived, one of them. And then their children are also doing that. And he said that even our kids do that right now, right? So it has affected their identity and, the way they are, even the smallest of things. It affects the physical health. It affects the mental health. For example, many children, for example, they have problems going through surgery, or going through MRIs, or, for example, go through extended periods of separation. So, for example, separation is a major issue for communities affected by trauma. Any small separation, and if it is for the first time, reminds them immediately of the time when they separated, or they got killed, or they got, affected.
Family members vanished. Yeah.
Absolutely, the family may vanish. So they react because, say, for example, in for one time, in Sikh communities and Bengali communities, separation was, and still in many of them, separation is seen as something which is permanent. There is no
Right.
temporary separation. So the anxiety and the depression, it arises very sharply in the process. So unspoken trauma, and as I told also you, that the language of trauma is silence. So trauma doesn't have to be spoken, it is never spoken. Nobody speaks about trauma eloquently. We hide it inside an encapsulated place within ourselves, and sometimes we express it symbolically through storytelling, through making it concrete, trying to give it a narrative. But very often that comes in fragments, that doesn't come in a sequence, that doesn't come in with a beginning, middle, and end. It comes sometimes with even hiding some of the most shameful parts, because trauma is to do with
Right.
survival. Trauma
Mm.
is, so until unless you feel safe enough inside and that survival issue is over, you don't start bringing up trauma. So therefore, it is seen that the first generation who went through the traumatic process, they hid it. They believe that their survival, they are still in the survival phase. When that goes down, then the talking about
Slowly.
trauma begins after the first generation is over. So therefore, for example, about Holocaust, about Punjab, about Bengal, people started talking about it after 20, 30 years, because that is the
Exactly.
time it took them to feel safe. Otherwise, it limited only, within ourselves, within a small community, within a small group. So explicit storytelling about trauma that way is rare. It starts usually after the first generation or when the survival issue is over.
And it seems very much, when you were talking, I was thinking very much like other things like rape or domestic violence. People don't talk about it suddenly. It's very similar. Yeah.
Because the brain is in survival mode. It will not
Exactly.
talk.
Yeah.
And when you are in survival mode, the Broca's region inside the brain, it goes silent, because
Right.
it will not, I mean, there is not much electrical activity taking place over there. So it says that remain silent, because by staying silent, you can survive. So
Right.
that's one reason why rape victims or other traumatic victims, they find it very difficult to speak,
To
or they
speak.
find it even difficult to scream and shout when they are assaulted, or even remembering it later, because the Broca's region is silent.
Right. Wow. That brings me to my third question. And here also I have a story. One survivor from Kashmir, he was in Pahalgam, and now he's in Jammu, of course. He brought up his children there. And when I asked him, do you talk about everything, how you fled, and his wife was pregnant, how you and your family fled, he said, no, I don't want children, all of that. But they got it. Now they're older. They heard about all the stories of the Kashmiri,
Yeah.
the fleeing and the ethnic cleansing and so forth. That is my third question. How do specific parenting child overprotective, emotionally distant, stem from survivor trauma and impact offsprings?
Yeah, there can be different parenting styles, but most parenting styles become that they are unable to teach their children the cues about danger. For example, I mean, physiologically, when you have a danger, the parents would teach the children, okay, you need to know how.
You don't go there, or
You don't go there, you train, you teach as part of a normal developmental process. Well, many parents don't, but most parents still do.
oh
But
yeah,
in many traumatized people or families that have gone through Holocaust, riots, violence, or all that, the brain is in a permanent state of alertness. So it is unable to pick up cues for danger. And the parents also, as a result, are in most situations unable to go ahead and teach the children to be ready, to be present for the cues of danger. What they say is that stay silent. For example, I'm a professor, and in my class, and I think that you mentioned about Kashmiri, you know, uh,
the people, ethnic
I have
cleansing.
Bengali Kashmiri students Kashmiri Pandits, Kashmir, Bengali, who have gone through partition, who have gone through the exodus where they were traumatized. One came and told me about horrible incidents that they had taken place. Now, I was teaching about post traumatic stress in the class, and the Bengali students, the Kashmiri students, the Kashmiri Pandit students, I should say, remained silent. So I looked at them. I said, "Hey, I mean, this is a class on clinical psychology. You are a doctoral, and master's level students. Anyone would like to talk?" They remained silent. So I said, "Why?" So they said, "Our families have told us to remain silent under such situations. Never talk about this in public." But I mean, I'll give a comparison, and I don't wish to be, pejorative or condescending in any way. I have Kashmiri Muslims in the class who very freely talk about, for example, their restraints, or for example, what they feel towards India or Indian army. They are very uninhibited about talking. But if I see Kashmiri Pandits, Bengalis, or even Punjabi, students, they are unwilling to talk about partition or the exodus or any reason like.
Wow.
They have been told about this by their parents. We are losing the battle in the process because it is not just a few professionals or a few people who talk about it that can make the thing, alive and active and a reality for people. So I think we need to teach our children to talk about it, and to tell them that, hey, you are talking in a safe environment right now. You have safety. It is no longer the same situation which existed 70 years back or 30 years back for us. You are safe now. That is not the message which many parents are giving. And I think that we need to do that through education, through large scale, maybe, dissemination of such talks.
Wow. That was reminding me when you were speaking, Dr. Mitro. Do you think that people who are brought up in Hindu Buddhist family are a little bit masochistic, which is the feminine psychology? Women never talk about their own thing.
Yeah.
It's masochism is there.
I would call it masochistic because I think they do it for survival reasons. That is what they are told. That is what they
Because they'll
adapt.
be hit from
Yeah,
outside. Yeah.
sure. Masochism is a different disorder, and
It's an
yeah,
internal one. Yeah.
I don't think they get any sense of pleasure or hedonism by to themselves
By suppressing,
by
yeah.
not talking about it. It's more a survival mechanism.
Wow, this is so tragic. So, what role does family, that's exactly what we're talking about, or lack thereof, play in transmitting this trauma pattern? Obviously, you very clearly said that Muslim families, they speak, but, with other families, Indic religions, what role does family narrative or lack thereof play in transmitting trauma patterns?
Sure. I think, I mean, I would say even Muslim families, Christian families, other families I have seen talking, but Hindu or Buddhist families, very often they teach their children. I mean, that is my experience. I mean, and I would say that
Yeah.
it's
And we can see that, so little writing.
academic.
Yeah.
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 So I do see that, and I only wish that they would teach this to the children to be able to speak about themselves. Yeah. So the family narrative, or the family narrative, it does play an important role, but it stays encapsulated as a secret within the family. For example, like you mentioned some time back about Kashmiri Pandit, families, and I have quite a bit of close connection, with that. I'm married to a Kashmiri Pandit, and therefore I know a little bit about it. I once had someone in the family who showed me that she carried a poison packet, since 1948, and she was telling me that the houses in Kashmir, they specifically built the doors to be small so that the Pathans, or the people from the Muslims, the Muslim Pathans who were there, could not enter that. So they would get stuck and they would get more time to run away. That's what was there. And she said that I carried a poison packet which was given to me by my parents, saying that if you find any Pathan coming over, just you three sisters consume it. She did not. I mean, they were able to run away at that time, come settle in Delhi. And after that, she carried the packet within her. And when she was, I think it was in her almost late 80s or 90s, that she was almost just before she died, she called her daughter, granddaughter, and said that, you just throw it away. I have kept it alive for all these years because I thought that even if I don't need it, maybe you or someone else might need it, so I'll pass it on. So they threw it away, right? So they carried it. I mean, it's a narrative, that's been going on for so long. I mean, in every family, who has gone through partition or trauma, you find this narrative. Like once I was interviewing a Sikh family, and the grandfather, the father, it was a young person with mental illness who had come. So I said, look, I would like to, now take the family history. So the father looked at the grandfather looked at the father. He said, what history will you take? Just write that we are a partition family. So I said, well, I understand that you are a partition family, but every third Sikh is a partition family. I still need details. So they said that no need for details. Where you write the case history, just say that they are a average partition family with everything. Several months later, as the treatment progressed and he became better, he became better. The grandfather came to me one day and he said, I mean, I was much younger to him. He said that beta putter, don't mind, I was rude to you, but our family contains a secret and we don't talk about it. So my sisters were sexually assaulted and killed, and several women, we we lost complete track of them. We don't talk about it. So when you asked me in front of my son to talk about it, I simply could not. I decided to remain quiet and be quiet. So I'm sorry for that. So I said no, and I said, if you want to talk about it. He said, you want me to talk about it after all these years? I said, sure. I mean, if sometimes. He did. He cried. I mean, it was almost after 50 years that he was talking about the whole thing. So the narrative stays hidden, encapsulated inside. It has layers of meanings. And then I asked the father one day, I said, the grandfather passed away during the person's treatment. I said, your father came, he talked about it. He said, yeah, I know. I said, did he talk to you? He said, no, he did not talk to us, but we know that several women in the family were, kidnapped, and they were raped and killed. We don't talk about it to cause pain to our parents, right? But it is there. So even though the grandfather had not talked about it, the whole family knew. They were keeping it as
Yeah.
a secret. So family narratives just remain like that, and it still remains to this day. We have yet to come to terms with the family narrative of the earlier generations that remains hidden. Yeah.
See, when Dr. Mitra, when you were talking, it reminded me of the difference between, I mean, I know that it took even the Jewish community a long time to speak out, but when I see the Native Americans here, they're like us. What, they won't talk. They have such a huge genocide. I mean, they had a genocide. And one student in my class, she said that, Dr. Mazumdar, I have a story. It's related to her grandma, and they're mostly matriarchal. And from her grandma, that the children were taken away from the family. They're Navajos.
Mm.
So the three kids were taken away to boarding school, and they became Catholic.
Yeah.
Like overnight, I don't know how people convert, but that's how they became. And the Mother Superior told them, one word of Navajo and I'll punish you. You'll
Yeah.
only speak English. So the kids at night, they were in a dorm and they were sleeping in bunk beds. And one kid started speaking in Navajo because that's their language. How can you
Yeah.
stop? And then someone told Mother Superior, these kids are talking Navajo. She came, she said, take out your toothbrush. They took the toothbrush with the orality. With the toothbrush, they made them clean the bathroom floor. I
Okay.
mean, this is so traumatic. I said, well, what? Said, yeah, this story was told by me. It's little stories, but they're not like Holocaust Museum and nothing of that sort. They're more like us.
Yeah.
And isn't that more tragic in a way? Wouldn't you call that more tragic when everyone knows, but no one's going to talk about it?
I think, I won't call it more tragic or less tragic. I think it's very similar to us because they faced an extermination for almost 500 years.
I
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
Spanish, and then,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. So, uh, uh, a long series of extinctions, one after another, is always more traumatic, is always more poignant, and always more intense than, say, a single incident.
One time,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this is
Mm,
trauma across generations. And
exactly.
I would say that being in the trauma field, I always find that, single level traumas or single incidents are still given more importance in psychology and psychiatry, particularly historical trauma, and something that, which we are trying to talk about, which is also true with Hindus, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
Afghanistan cleansed,
yeah.
Pakistan cleansed. Now Bangladesh is being cleansed.
Yeah. So it is historically, I mean, in fact, I can tell you an incident which, when we were working with Kashmiri, internally displaced persons, one person at the gate once told me that, showing to this camp, which was called Mutti camp, where they were staying, that this camp represents the dream of Aurangzeb. I said, how did Aurangzeb 300 years ago, is related to the camp? He said, we were the last batch to leave Kashmir, and we
They
fulfilled
had
his
an
dream.
exodus.
He
Yeah.
wanted Kashmir to be free of Hindus, and we fulfilled that dream. So this camp is also often called Aurangzeb's dream. That's what we have named it. So that is how, there is a continuity to historical trauma, and it exists in people's minds. I work with with Pakistani Hindu refugees, with Bangladeshi Hindu refugees. I'm working on them right now. In fact, we have just published a study on Bangladeshi Hindu refugees, and we have built also a scale for, measuring the fear of extinction, which has gone for publication. When we talk to them, you can be sure that they talk about the last 100 years,
Right.
like when it began, like when, they say that our grandparents, ancestors told us that this is your mati, your bhite, don't leave it, we decided to stay here. How much a mistake that we have made right now, as we realize. Some also told us to leave, so we should have. But the histories of over the last 100 years, it is something strange to hear it, because these are not intellectual people, very of them, and I don't mean in any other way, but they see their trauma, their present condition, as linked to what they have gone through in the last 100 years.
Exactly like the Native Americans.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Now that brings us to part two, which are symptoms and manifestations. What common psychological symptoms, PTSD, anxiety, mistrust, survivor guilt, appears in descendants, and how do they differ from direct survivors?
I think the difference between direct survivors and the later survivors is that for direct survivors, the issue of survival and survival oriented behavior is very common. Everything they do, it is survival oriented, right?
Because it's right here, right now.
Yeah, and as we see that, in trauma, everything happens in the present, because the brain loses the power very often to contextualize the trauma, particularly, the parts of the brain which contextualize the trauma, they are not able to do that. So you feel that it is happening with you in the, in the present. So for the first generation, it's very often survival oriented. So for the second generation, that is a little less, but because the older generation have, not been able to pass on cues, they have not been able to talk to them. Very often, they develop symptoms of anxiety, depression, and they grow up in an environment where
Right.
keeping secrets was the norm. Certain things are not to be talked about in the family. Certain things are, the absolute no-nos. We know that if the talk even comes, or for example, something, happens on the TV, the parents respond like that. So there are certain things we need to distance. So there is a strong avoidance reaction that they develop without knowing why or how. So therefore, all these symptoms, psychological symptoms, develop, which is second generation. And some studies have shown that even the third generation is actually higher in developing of symptoms than even the second generation. So it
So it comes
continues.
down.
Yeah, it continues, so
Yeah.
therefore, direct survivors and non-direct, I mean, the later survivors, when they are survivors too, they differ from each other.
When I used to visit my maternal grandparents' house, always they're talking about Buri Ganga and the huge house.
Right.
And I was thinking, why are they talking about it? Now I understand. And my grandma didn't like that small 2-room house in Kolkata. She just couldn't stand it.
So,
That's, lots of like zamindar, like the way. And they say, why are you talking about that again? I'm bored as little. But that's what the pond, they had a huge pond and the fishing and all of that. So
yeah.
that's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would just add one thing over here. It had probably less to do with the size of the rooms or the space. It was the connect that she had
The
with the pond,
idea.
with the land, right? So
Right.
that connect she could not make, because I haven't seen people, uh, you know, being affected by the space of it. Like Kashmiri families, they talk about having the orchard and here living in a refugee one room apartment where there is no privacy. But after
Right.
some time, they start talking about their connection, the bonding that they have with
The
the land.
bonding. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that, I mean, that is gone, and that is, something they are not able to build. And even if they are, even if they try to build, they are stopped. Like I remember in one family, refugee family that we had gone to, the we had to make a home visit for some reason. I don't recall after so many years what, but the daughter had decorated the home, knowing that I and another person would be coming. And when we were just about to enter, the mother was screaming at the daughter, saying that, why have you decorated it? This is, she said, well, uncle and auntie, they are both coming. So I just thought I would decorate. And it was very simple decoration, with paper clips and some flowers from the park that she had picked up, decorated that. And the mother was furious. Todo inko, pheko inko. We don't need to, go ahead and, we should not, go ahead and do this, right? It was got nothing to do, with showing misery. It was to do with that we only do this in a home, right? So that,
Hmm.
yeah, she said, this is something we only do it if we either go back or if we, get somewhere where we can settle down and have a home, right? So it's the emotional connect that matters, nothing else, not the
Exactly.
size of the room.
Yeah. That brings me, how does intergeneration trauma affect core areas like safety, trust, self-esteem, intimacy, and control?
Okay, it affects actually all these areas. I mean, in the sense that safety and control, they often go together, because
Right.
trauma disrupts these two very foundations of human existence. You feel
Right.
that you are neither safe, and as I say, safety, we are all in normal life able to contextualize safety, you
Right.
know, but these people are not. To every system, every situation is threatening and dangerous, right? So they are in a perpetual state of alertness, and the brain loses the ability to, discriminate. The self-esteem is also very low, and it happens partly because of the, relation. I mean, relation between the people around the camps, or the people who know their identity, or even, I mean, it starts from school. Like, for example, Kashmiri children in the camps, they were teased, made fun of by calling them, camp wale bache, that there was a pejorative.
Children will do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other children would never accept them. They did not, see that they were the, I mean, they were always very conscious of, going and, walking through. So self-esteem is, definitely an issue that they face, because they see their status as less than the status of
Oh,
people outside. Yeah, intimacy is also affected. I mean, both in terms of ability to be intimate, both in a physical and sexual sense. Many women talk about being finding it difficult to be sexually intimate. They, I mean, do not face arousal. Many men talk about not able to be, finding arousal. There is often a deep sense of shame that they carry. Many people who have been traumatized, they have also been sexually traumatized, or they
oh,
know
yeah.
someone, who has been sexually traumatized, which is very, real and alive for them. So the ability to be intimate, for example, many refugee camps where I have worked, intimacy after some time arises as a major issue for the couples. Not just it is not just due to the lack of privacy, but the sense of shame that they carry in what they have gone through. Yeah.
Thank you. Can descendants develop trauma responses like heightened stress even without directly experience the genocide?
I mean, stress studies have shown that they're in a constant state of stress, of growing in a family, in a system where normalcy is not the norm. So they are unable to kind of discriminate. They are not able to, contextualize issues. Every situation, every issue is threatening, dangerous, and poses survival. So it they do develop trauma responses. Like, for example, I one of my doctoral students is doing research on addiction in Punjab, and she says that many of them, it could be due to the 1984 violence that took place against the community. Many went back, or the partition trauma that they have gone through, or the historical trauma that they carry. And she says that I definitely believe that, I mean, this could be one of the major contributory factors about the sudden, so much of a spike in the increase
The
in
drug.
addiction issues and drugs over there. Alcoholism is also very high within the community. Alcoholic disorders are very common in the community. So yes, all those things definitely play a role. Yes.
Fantastic. And then the last part, resilience and healing. We have to come to that. What factors promote resilience and break the cycle of trauma? Community support, cultural practices.
See, uh, community support, by and large, does not come, or even cultural practices. Like, for example, if you take the Kashmiri Pandit community, there has been not much community support for them, right? Let's be, clear about it. Uh, Cultural practices, yes. Like, for example, Kashmiri community, again, I'm coming back to it, or they often did their prayers, their puja inside the home, right? Because of the fear of someone attacking, someone invading, them if they take out a religious procession or something, right? So now they have only recently started, while being in Delhi, to go ahead and have religious functions in public. Earlier, they would never have that. They would never,
Because of that whole incidents. Yeah.
because of 500-year-old history.
Right.
So so the factors that promote uh, resilience is often what you call, like, the way, if I describe the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, it
Oh,
had
yeah.
political will. It said that, let make forgiveness an issue, which means letting go. And it had all philosophical, spiritual, and psychotherapeutic elements in the whole process. So
Yeah.
those are the things that promote resilience and break the cycle of trauma. uh, it is important to know that trauma can be transformed. I mean, trauma is
Oh,
something that
yeah.
teaches you. I mean,
Through art. Yeah.
yeah, through art, or it is transformative in the sense that you will never forget it. It will always be
Be
there.
there.
Yeah, so it
But
would remain as a story. It would remain as a kind of a, after some time, become a healing ally, even if face it and go ahead. And if you, use trauma related therapies, which focus upon developing control and safety for, for yourself and teaching that to the children. So those factors do promote resilience and, break the cycle. They have the possibility.
yeah, how do therapy and community interventions help survivors and their families through historical trauma? Because, my family always, my mother's side, especially, always, even my father's side, they talked about what they had, what they lost, they had to come, but they never got any interventions or therapy.
Sure.
But when I visited Dhaka and Arai Hajar and whatever, and I brought in the pictures, they were very happy. But they would never seek any therapy for that, but they're talking about it.
Sure, because it was considered, therapy for trauma was
Yeah, they will
considered
never do it.
all.
Yeah.
Like if you see, for example, it started with Vietnam vets, and there was so much shame
Oh,
and
yeah.
ridicule associated because you could not stand, and often trauma therapy is political. So therefore, it's something that
Taboo.
exposes the role of the powers that were negligent, that did not bother. So therefore, they don't encourage it, right? So, like for example, many times when in doing trauma therapy with people, I have had people in politics or in power intervene and say that why don't you stop doing that? I mean, you are raising uncomfortable questions for everyone.
Because then there's a perpetrator. We have to point to a perpetrator. Yeah.
And in trauma therapy you have to name the perpetrator, you have to point out a perpetrator. In classical therapy also, it was not perpetrator oriented. Classical therapy was neutral. If you see, it was felt that the focus was on the victim, their what they are going through. But in trauma therapy the focus is not only on the victim but also on the people who caused it. So
Very
therefore,
much.
there are powerful, syndicates that do not want that to come about because it will show effect upon them. Like if you see the Native Americans, I mean, if you bring out their trauma, you talk about what the whites have done for 500 years, right? How will they then say that Columbus discovered America?
Columbus Day. My
So
God.
how will this, how will they talk about the Pilgrim's Progress and how things they did to conquer and disseminate a whole population. So
Right.
therefore, it's important to
And
know.
just the churches beneath there is a sun temple of the Incas.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And therefore, so in political, religious ways, therefore, therapy is dissuaded. I had a Christian priest, who once came to, who was referred, to me. And then in the process, when he was talking, I discovered he was a pedophile sent to India, because in India, the laws regarding pedophilia are lax. So he had a problem. The church did not want to admit it, so they sent him to India. So when it came about, and I said, "I'm sorry, I don't think I'll report it to the police." Then a call came to me saying that, well, Dr. Mitra, we are taking him back, to another country. And before I could even say it, he was gone, right? So, you know, when you do trauma therapy, you have to come across, unlike most other therapies, against
A
power, the
perpetrator.
structure,
Yeah.
I mean, that is embedded in the reason why trauma takes place. Yeah.
Exactly. So interesting. So, what role do cultural elements like monuments or remembrance play in healing versus deepening trauma?
Uh, they play both roles actually. They play a role in healing, or
Mhm.
sometimes they can even deepen trauma, right? Because it is just not important to create a monument. It is important to create a story about it. It is important to make it into a healing a ritual or a structure. Like for example, if you go to Jallianwala Bagh, they have created a healing ritual, a
Right.
healing
Yeah.
structure
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the middle.
Mhm.
People take selfies over that, right?
Right.
Okay, I mean, if you ask them, they have, it is not remembrance, it is not healing. In fact, most people use Jallianwala Bagh today as a picnic spot, right? So there is no one to talk about the history.
Actual history. Yeah.
If you need to find the descendants of those people who need to come and talk about it, what their lives have been since then. So there has to be a culture of talking about trauma and traumatic incidents, right? So therefore, it's very important that just creating a monument per se does not heal, right? So therefore, it has to be. For example, even I mean, there are very good ideas like even creating museums. India doesn't India doesn't have the culture of having museums about trauma, because we haven't. I believe we are growing up to be, but we haven't grown up to be a society that faces and confronts our past, because we have gone through so much. The issue of survival is so much uppermost, and there has also been so much of repression around these issues that we did not want to get into that, but now we are
Mhm.
moving away from it, which is a very welcome sign. And I think that programs like this and people talking about it on social media is a very welcome sign.
Thank you. And then my last question. These are all very profound. We have to think about this over and over again. How does therapy address symptoms linked to specific survivor experiences like survivor guilt, separation, anxiety?
uh, I think I mean, there are therapeutic methods. Most of the therapies are in this situation are existential therapies that work. It is
Pearl, I think the couple they did in the German couple introduced the
that is that is
existential.
that is Gestalt, but
Yeah,
I think that is yes. I have used Gestalt work in my therapy with trauma survivors, with second generation survivors. I have used Gestalt work. I have used existential therapies to ask specific questions and make them go through it. It is very important that survivor guilt, separation anxieties uh, may not exactly work best with techniques per se, but you need to go into the profound conditions of human existence and deal with them, deal with them at that level. uh, don't think of people as those who are not intellectual enough, or they may not be able to understand. People who go through trauma develop a surprisingly inner depth in order to absorb what you are talking about. So therefore they do understand. I mean, many people we worked with, say refugees across all over Asia, they were able to understand philosophical concepts and depths, and that is what they found I mean,
very
most healing for them. Sometimes I use storytelling with them to talk about how people who survived, uh, they went through. People in Asia are surprisingly, I won't say surprisingly, that's the wrong word, they're very resilient, right?
very
there is
resilient.
a there is a Western pejorative sense that Western methods and techniques can be applied en masse with them. No, by and large, no. The therapy in the East is collective. I mean, group therapy, where you use the historical narratives of finding a place for yourself in society, how you survived. There are stories. If you evoke those memories and experiences, people are able to find healing. I mean, they have dealt with it for almost thousand.
Thousands of years, yeah,
So
thousands and thousands of
there is
years.
an inbuilt wisdom in the societies and the communities to deal with that. So that's
So
what I
that's
would
the
say.
resource that needs to be
Exactly.
tapped. Yeah,
Exactly. And you can train local people in order to deal, with that. Everywhere where we have worked, we have always found that we have left some therapists behind in the people who pick up what we are doing, and then they
And they
become the
continue.
therapists and the healers for the community. It works wonderfully because therapy is something in such situations which is very much natural, collective, and there is an inbuilt wisdom at many places to grow over it and walk past it. Yes.
Yeah. And what you just said about the Asian, the whole wisdom resource, I was thinking that our two epics both are tragic. The Ramayana, I think of them as tragedy. They're also traumas, war, and yeah, we have all those wisdoms inside us. When
Sure.
I translated the Noakhali book,
Yeah.
then I sat and I couldn't think. I said, "Oh, so my people survived this,
Yeah.
and they're
Sure.
still alive and
Sure.
functioning." I mean, I heard about Noakhali from family, but I didn't read it. Reading is different, and when I read the whole thing, there were days when I couldn't do anything. I just sat there and thought, "Oh my goodness, they survived all of this."
Sure. We
As
are
you said,
survivors.
yeah.
We are survivors. We have survived colonialism. We have survived slavery. We have survived all attempts to intimidate, suppress our voice.
Annihilate.
Yeah, to annihilate us, to finish our religion. We have survived that, and that is what should be taught in our textbooks.
Oh my goodness, this was so wonderful, but this is not enough. I know you're super busy. Thank you. Thank you for coming, but I hope you can make time and again educate
Sure.
us because this is so important.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Dr. Mitra,
Thank
very
you,
much.
Namaskar. It was
Namaskar.